You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we are on a mission to help financial brands stop losing loans and deposits. And the way that we do that is by guiding them through our Banking on Digital Growth program. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to invite you, if you are on a marketing team, a sales team, a leadership team at a financial brand, I'd like to invite you to join the Digital Growth community. We have over 300 members who are all committed to connecting, learning, and growing even better together. You can become a member in less than 60 seconds when you go to www.digitalgrowth.com/membership. I look forward to seeing you in there. Now, let's get into today's episode, because last week, as of recording, we launched Banking on Change. And Audrey, our operations lead here, has had a couple of conversations with me to gain my perspective into the writing process, into just some of the perspective of the book itself and the journey that we both took to get the book here. But today we're gonna turn the tables a little bit, because Audrey was very instrumental, a fantastic collaborator behind the scenes to help bring Banking on Change to you. In fact, she experienced a lot of change and transformation on this journey as well. And we're going to talk about that today, and how her experience can help guide you on your own journey of growth at your financial brand, at your bank, at your credit union, at your fintech. Welcome to the show, Audrey. It is always good to share time with you. And today we're actually going behind the cover in a little bit of a different perspective. I never thought about that until just now. But what is good in your world before we get into your thinking about the journey that you've been on through the Banking on Change experience?
Yeah, so I had a pretty exciting weekend this past Saturday. I participated in a Survivor challenge. For those of you Survivor, it's been on, I think, CBS for, decades now. And there was a Survivor game that was basically a replicate of the entire game, just condensed down into one day. I mean, we had the tribes, we had challenges, mental, physical, there was fire building, there was voting people out. We had about 21 people play as a mix of girls and guys, and the top 3 people were, voted on by those who had left the game. And I am very proud and a little bit surprised still to say that I was the lone survivor of that group of people and won the challenge. It was so much fun, and doing things I never thought I would do.
Well, I think that is such a timely discussion for today's conversation, because you had to adapt. You had to transform. You had to do things that made you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And in fact, you've been doing that now for the past 2 weekends. Well, just for lack of a better word, you've been playing in the mud. And
yeah.
And how does, if you think about that idea of AQ, adaptability quotient, doing things that you don't normally do, what have you gained through these experiences that have attributed to your exponential growth journey?
I have generally in my life been pretty, I guess, unapologetic about what I do, what I don't do. You've heard me say this a million times, like I don't run, and that's okay. I will tell everybody that. I don't care how much you love running. I don't like it. Not my cup of tea. I'll be happy sitting on the sidelines. Things like that. It doesn't bother me. I have no problem saying, no, that's not for me. But what I think I've realized over the last maybe year or so are how many of those things that I said in the past are that's just not me. That's just not what I like to do. It's just not how I operate. How much of that was just really limited thinking and, not experiencing or really even giving it much of a try before I've already kind of sold myself, out of it. And so I've tried to start to look for times and embrace situations that I might not normally do. And it's not to say I have to change my mind. Look, I went on a 5K 2 weeks ago in the mud. I still don't like running, but was it the worst experience of my life? Absolutely not. Did I have a blast? Yes. Should my, lack of not caring about running stop me? No. So I think it's just realizing that, there are so many opportunities out there that I could be missing out on.
Well, you got out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
You did things that you don't normally do, and even you did things that you don't want to do. And when we make that commitment to do the things that we don't want to do or we don't normally do, that increases our adaptability quotient. That increases our grit, and it also helps to increase our level of confidence, because what we thought was a previously held belief that I don't do this, I'm not a runner. But while you still might not identify as a runner, you in fact actually are a runner. You went out and you did a 5K. That's a commitment right there. And I think that's the whole point of today's conversation, is if we all just take a moment to pause and reflect on our own journeys of exponential growth and look back at the times when we experienced the greatest level of growth, whether that be personally or professionally, or when we're talking about exponential growth, both at the same exact time. If you think about the banking on change journey, how have you grown? How have you transformed as an individual, as Audrey?
Wow, that is a really great question. I think being involved in the process for me was not only just a lot of fun, but it was a big growth area. I've been, a book nerd for a while, taught reading as a reading teacher, and just have this tremendous love and appreciation for books. Always been fascinated with them. And recently, just in the last 4 or 5 years, really been appreciating books as a way of growth, a growth opportunity for me personally and professionally. Kind of switched from my fiction loving novels over to more of nonfiction, personal growth. And I think that, is it somewhat of a dream for me one day to write my own book? Absolutely. Does it sound like something before that I could attain? Because I know how much goes into it, and it takes so much talent and commitment and energy. But I think just getting my feet wet and watching you through this process and kind of being there has showed me that, you know what? Yes, it's still a challenge to write a book, and it still does take a lot of commitment. But it's not some, far off lofty goal. It is something that, you know what, Audrey, you probably could do this with a little bit more focus, a little bit more practice, a little bit more dedication and time and energy. So I think just kind of being around it and surrounding yourself with it. And I think that's a really great lesson in life too. It's like, if you want to achieve something, surround yourself with it, surround yourself with people who are doing it. And you'll see that you probably can yourself.
Your point about surrounding yourself with people, it's one that I don't think we should gloss over. I think about my own experience in Strategic Coach. I think about my experience in Elevated with Chad.
Yep.
This is community here. And Jim Rohn was the one who said, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Exactly.
But something else that I'm wanting to surface and maybe come back to here for those who are watching or listening, just to have them pause and ponder on a bit, because you opened up with running, and I don't like to run. You didn't think that you could write a book before this experience yourself. And I know that you are. Like, that is a done deal.
Right.
I've been in your seat, literally, because when David Baker came in 2012 and you were there for that experience.
Yep.
And he gave the hard truth, and we transformed the business model back then. And it was a very painful experience. But one of the things that David said back in 2012, he said, "You're going to write a book." And I all but just wanted to laugh in his face.
Had you never thought about it before?
Never.
I don't think I've asked you this question before.
Never.
Wow.
The idea
Wow.
of writing a book was never even, and even after David said, "You're going to write a book," it was almost like, yeah, right, whatever.
Right.
It was not
So
the
it was
right.
8 years before you did, correct?
It 7 about 7 years before I made the commitment, 8 years before we published Banking on Digital Growth. But it was one of those situations to where he told me that. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. But hearing you talk about, well, now I think that I can, or now I can. I know I can run a 5K. Now I know I can write a book. This is digging deep into the whole principles of banking on change to achieve exponential growth, which is your belief.
Yeah.
It's, what do you believe to be true about yourself? What do you believe to be true about your team? What do you believe to be true about your organization? Because that belief is going to directly influence your thoughts, your feelings, and emotive state, which will then go on to inspire your action that, when repeated, become your habits. And so you have a different belief now based upon your experience. And I'm just curious, it's like, how many people are watching or listening that they believe something to be true based upon a previous experience, that in fact they could transform that based upon the people that they're even just around.
Yeah. That was actually Katie Sparks yesterday, posted on LinkedIn, something very, very similar to this. What are we limiting ourselves? What are we not doing because of our self-limiting beliefs about ourselves? And how can we flip that?
Well, for example, like, I think about a financial brand leader right now. They might be thinking, oh, I know digital growth is important. It's very obvious to myself. It's very obvious to the organization, but I'm just a retail banker. That belief system is one of the biggest impediments, I would say, to their future growth. Mm-hmm. And so if you think about reframing your belief system here, just on your idea of writing, and it's like, I'm doing everything possible not to like drop the title of the book that you're going to write, because I know it's going to be a fantastic book. We've had these conversations about it, but
yeah, well, I mean, you talk about, retail, what is it, retail banker you just said?
Uh-huh.
You could argue the same. Look, I'm operations. I'm behind the scenes. I'm systems and processes. I'm not front stage. That's not what I came in here to do, but I still can do it. I can do it well, but I had to get over that. You can do this just because you're systems and operations and you're not the visionary. You're not, front stage, James Robert. That could have held me back had I continued to believe that way.
That's very true. And if you think what you've done in this is what the whole first part of the book is about, you've committed to go on an exponential growth journey. You've ascended up to your apex of awareness. You looked back and to see where you're at. You looked down the mountain to see where you're at today. But then more importantly, you looked ahead towards the future, and you almost brought your future self into the present. And so you're operating from a future focused context. And when you think about these three parts of the book, we open up with the exponential growth journey. That's part one. Part two is then it's the preparation for exponential growth. It's like, okay, you've got the exponential growth journey. You've kind of got this is the philosophy. Then you've got prepare for exponential growth. Here's the tools that you need. And then finally, how to achieve exponential growth every 90 days. This is the practical roadmap that you can apply. What's your favorite part of the book here?
My favorite part is definitely section 2, which is prepare for exponential growth. And I was actually reviewing some of the Amazon reviews this morning, and I saw that Tracy Conan with the Divorce Money Guide, she said that this was her favorite section of the book too.
Why is it yours? And it's interesting when you start getting feedback, and the feedback over, I mean, just the last 7 days. If you think about it, as of recording, we published the book 7 days ago. And
Yep.
I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, which was basically 6 days. And they go, "What a week you've had." I go,
Yeah.
"It actually is pretty mind-boggling when you just stop and pause, because the Monday before launch, it just was just another day. Then we launched, and then it's like you see this momentum behind and the feedback coming in, and what
Yep.
is connecting, what is resonating, and oh, this is such a timely book. Thank you so much. Like, this is really helpful. Oh, I'm able to apply this like right now. Why
Yeah.
is part 2, prepare for exponential growth, your favorite part of the book?
So this is really, this part is all about personal growth. It's all about how to put in practice, how to build, the environment and the habits that are conducive for growth. So you're taking everything you learned in section 1, that knowledge, and then it's how can you practically apply this to things that are in your control. How can you, take the next steps going forward. Really, it's a lot of creating awareness, and then you bring a lot of stoicism into this part. I love the section on digital stoicism, and really focusing on yourself and generating awareness with your environment and your habits and your thoughts. And so this one for me, I just really love because it really has a lot of moments for self-reflection.
One thing you said, and this idea of self-reflection, I mean, that is one of the 4 seasons for exponential growth. There's a season to learn, to think, to do, and then I would say, even most importantly, to review.
Yeah.
If you connect some dots back to what you shared earlier, you've always liked to read, you've always liked to learn. What is the connection here between being a lifelong learner? Because chapter 5, exponential growth begins within. And the idea of personal growth, I think, in a vertical like financial services, it might make people feel a little bit uncomfortable, particularly within the context of an organization, within the context of a team.
Yeah.
Why do we have to start within?
Yeah, I mean, I think true transformation of any kind has to start within. And this section really focuses on the fact that, knowledge alone, having the knowledge alone isn't going to predict your success as far as, change and transformation. You have to really have that feeling and that desire and that motivation inside. And I know you talk about the 4 steps for human transformation, and you've asked this question to, I mean, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of times now.
Yeah.
When you see differently, you think differently. When you think differently, you do what? Well, we know the answer has always been do. But you're missing that, that middle piece, which is you got to feel things differently. Who is it? I know you quoted it in the book. The heart of change is in the emotions.
Yes.
And, change of any side, of any size, starts within, and you have to have that motivation, that desire inside, or else you're not going to be able to then rally those on your team and then in your organization.
Well, I mean, this is going to require some honest conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to require you to tell the truth. I want to quote my friend here, Jeffrey Kendall, because one of the things that he has shared when we were writing the book, he's the CEO over at Nimbus, he said, quote, "We don't talk enough about personal growth and personal transformation as a necessary ingredient to organizational transformation. Transformation is about personal transformation first and foremost. It's about developing a new mindset." And there was a study that we shared in the book from Viking, and it talked about the lies that we tell ourselves.
Yes.
But we also lie to our team.
Yeah.
We also lie to others.
And it's those, and I know you're going to probably give us the examples, but it's those little white lies that really it's not that you're lying to be like malicious even or sneaky. It's almost lies to just like avoid, conflict, avoid confrontation.
The 3 examples: lying to make a colleague feel better.
Yep.
Lying about liking your employer or your boss, and then lying about liking the company.
Yep.
And I think that's where all transformation that leads to future growth has to start by simply telling the truth.
Yeah. And lying about your knowledge. I think it's hard sometimes or oftentimes to admit that you don't know something, that you're not an expert, and that you might need outside help.
Or on the flip side, though, we do see imposter syndrome pop up many times with leaders. They have the knowledge, they have the expertise, they have the experience, but there is a mental block that is preventing them from seeing things differently. And if they're not going to see things differently, then the future is going to be the predictable past based upon the behavior in the present moment that is rooted in a past belief. So I think here too, 80%, around 80%, 8 out of 10 people do not feel engaged with the work that they're doing. And that was a study that we had quoted here. And if you're lying about all of these things, you're lying to yourself. And I think once again, how you open up the conversation. I'm not a runner. I never thought I could write a book, but now you do. And I think what was the transformation there? Once again, I've been in that seat. I never thought that I would write. It was never even my field of vision. And even after being told by David Baker that you're going to write a book, I kind of brushed up. It took me 8 years, 7 years, 8 years to publish after being told that. That's almost a decade of time.
Right.
But now it was like, did one book. Well, that was a great experience. Well, let's do this again. Did a second book. Oh my gosh, that was a painful experience. But let's do it again.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of taking situations from the past and just looking and reframing here. So if you think about this idea of reframing, and I know that preparing for exponential growth is your favorite section of the book. How have you reframed your thinking through this book writing experience? Because like you said, your operations lead, you're backstage, but I value that so much because the front stage can only be as good as the backstage. There's a yin, there's a yang. It complements. How have you continuously reframed your thinking through this experience?
Gosh, I think maybe being a little bit more adaptable in the sense of, we just in the last few years have had lots of conversations about what the vision is moving forward, and where we see DGI in the future, and what value we want to create, and how exactly we were going to tackle that. I wasn't sure, like, what exact role was I going to play. And then it got to the point where it's like, okay, we want to do, we want to launch this podcast. We want to bring video in. We want to, bring interesting and relevant content that's going to be helpful to our listeners. And then I started to realize, I think I might be involved in this more than I thought I was, mainly because I wanted to see it through. And it was like, if I have to be the one that does it, I'll do it. Like, let's go. And so I think just being able to be adaptable and learn new things and try new things and rid myself of some of those self-limiting beliefs, because I think I do believe in what we're doing so much that if I have to adjust, what I'm doing in my role to make that happen, then I will.
Well, that's where Chapter 7, it's about accelerating transformation through agile growth. And when you think about this idea of agility, I think about your survivor experience this past weekend.
Yes.
You had to make a fire.
Oh my gosh.
To win, because there was like 21 people.
There's 21 people.
And you had to make a fire to win
I had
this
to make
thing. You were the final three, right?
Yes, I had to make a fire in order to make it to the final three. So you weren't going to win the thing if you couldn't make a fire. Well, I will tell you, going into this, I was just so happy to be along for the ride. It sounded like a really fun way to spend my Saturday. I had zero expectations of making it to the end. And so I knew going into it that building a fire was going to be part of it. And I thought, you know what? I'm not even going to get that far to build a fire. So I'm not even going to worry about, Googling and researching how do you build a fire with a flint. But as it turned out, I found myself in the finals with this, fire starter in front of me, and I didn't know what to do at all. And so I just kept thinking, what are the fundamentals that about building a fire? Anything. I'm like pulling off of 36 years of anything I know about fire.
But I think that's a fantastic lesson for those watching and listening to Pause and Ponder on, because how many times, if we are working towards achieving exponential growth, we're going to find ourselves in a moment when we are handed flint and have to figure out how to make fire, even if we've never done that before. And that can be very intimidating for some who might not have a high AQ just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like going into it, I thought, well, I might as well give it a try. I'm here. But then once I kind of started getting into it, it was very much like an endurance thing. It was 15 or 20 minutes of just straight striking this, trying to get it to light, and then, moving things around and trying to get, like my little, I asked you the name of this earlier. What was the
kindling?
See, the kindling. This is how much I don't know about fires, guys. I can't even remember the tools I used.
And you're talking to someone who loves, like, as a kid, I was a pyromaniac. Like in an apocalyptic situation, that is going to be my contribution to the group is going to be, I will be fire. And but you have to have the kindling to get it started, very small.
And there's strategy there too. You got to kind of peel it apart, have it airy. So I kind of knew a little bit of that, but then it was like, it just wasn't working. And the people around me were struggling a little bit too. And I was like, now I will tell you, my fingernails are, my thumbnails, I am like ripped a nail off. I was bleeding at one point.
I saw yesterday.
Yes, it was painful, but I was like, I will be damned if I give up. I may not light this fire first and win, but I'm not going to quit. And I wanted to, guys. I wanted to so badly.
I think that's something to
I'm so
pause on.
over it.
You actually, and see, this is the whole point of when you're working towards exponential growth. The most important technology to master in the age of AI is the biological computer that sits between your ears. Your brain is the hardware, but your mind is the software.
Yep.
And you wanted to quit, and I think that's an important point to make. I mean, once again, I mean, if you think about the idea of like the 5K, it's like, oh, I don't enjoy this, but you mastered the mind. And that's a Stoic principle right there. You mastered the mind so that you could master the body. Same thing with this. You mastered the mind so that you could master the body, so that you could master the fire. And in fact, you were, to a degree, using quote unquote technology. I mean, one of the things, if you think about what I wrote in the book and how I opened up, and if we go back, we look at the 4 really big exponential transformations over time. One of the very first exponential transformations in the human narrative is when we learn to harness the power of fire.
Yeah.
And you had that experience yourself when you wanted to quit. When you're like, you know what? Because like you said, you were striking this flint for 15 minutes, not getting any result. When you wanted to quit, what helped you push through that and really reprogram your mind?
Yeah, I will say, and to be quite honest with you, there were multiple times where I was like, can the person next to me, because there was 3 of us doing, can the person next to me please just get this fire lit so I can stop? My arms are killing me. My hands are killing me. But I just going into it, I'm not a quitter, and I don't mind losing to somebody if I try my hardest, but I'm not going to just give up and quit.
Right.
And I think what I had to really remember to do, and to be honest with you, I think in the end, it's not, I know that in the end, this is what helped me to build this fire first and win is I did not keep using the same strategy over and over again.
You adapted.
I would sit there for several minutes and I would try something. And if it's not working, I'm like looking at what I had in front of me, my materials. And I'm like, okay, well, let's fix it. Let's try something different, because you're not going to sit here striking the same way and expect a different result if you don't make any changes. And so I probably tried 3 or 4 different iterations of how I had my kindling spread out. And I had a little bit of it was on top of a piece of foil. So I experimented with folding the foil around to kind of keep it contained a little bit. So I think that was the most important thing is 1, not giving up, and 2, don't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results.
But that right there, it's the idea of the 90-day growth method, except you compress that into a 15-minute period of time to where you started off with some type of action. You got some momentum. You're striking the flint. Oh, this isn't working. Let me review what I've done. Oh, let me think about what I've learned over the years about fire and my limited knowledge, but it was enough knowledge to then think about how you could do even better, change your approach, optimize, adjust, adapt. And then you continuously went through this period of iteration within 15 minutes. That actually reminds me of, I've worked with executives in workshops, and we give them, 8 to 10 pieces of spaghetti. We give them, a 2-foot long string. We give them a marshmallow. We give them a couple feet of tape, and we're like, go build the highest structure. And what is interesting in having run this with hundreds of leaders, the patterns are the same. Most groups, when you observe them, will spend so much time thinking, planning, strategizing, talking, and they've already burned through somewhat 50% of their time before they might be dabbling a little bit, but they're not taking massive action. And they'll wait, right? And then, and typically we give them 10 to 15 minutes. So let's just say 15 minutes for this example. Around 10 to 12 minutes, that's when the panic starts to set in, because they're like, oh my gosh, we got 3 minutes left. Like, and so they
Yeah.
begin to rush, they begin to hurry. And then right at the very end, and I think that's the point. At the very end, they'll put the marshmallow on top. Right as the clock is ticking out. It's like a half court shot. Put the marshmallow on top. Whole thing tumbles over. Kindergarten. I was like, kindergartners have done this as well, and this has been just through some secondary research. Kindergartners has done. They've done this exercise. They're the ones who build the highest towers, because they're the ones who are building, putting the marshmallow, it falls. Rapid learning leads to rapid transformation, leads to rapid growth. You were saying Colby.
Yeah, Colby does this. They have a workshop. And I it's been a while since I've done it, but this just reminded me of it. And they ask you to do a very similar thing. And it's interesting to watch people, because you have those who they get their series or their bag of items, and you've got those who sit there and they sort everything out first, and they kind of assess what all they have, and they're looking at it and they're planning. Then you have those who just sit there and kind of look at it and mentally think through, like, what could I possibly do? And then you have those who just take action and they just start building and experimenting. And that's your quick start. And it's not so much to say, one is better than the other, but I think it's being aware in these situations and thinking about time and thinking about just doing something. I do think naturally, because of our Colbys being, fact finders, resistant quick starts, that we are a little bit slow. I say we as an industry, a little bit slow to take action, because we don't, if we're not 100% sure it's great or it's going to work or it's perfect, we don't want to put it out there. And I can empathize with that quite a bit, but that's kind of where that 80% comes in. The idea of the MVP, just get something going and then iterate from there.
That would be a very interesting activity with a team or a group of teams within an organization. We do their Colby profile ahead of time, but then we stack the teams. We put all the fact finders with the fact finders. We put all the follow-throughs with the follow-throughs. We'll put the one or two quick starts off in the corner.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see, because then what we're showing is how cognitive cloning can be an impediment to growth, and why each one of these different action modes, the way we naturally take action, the way we naturally solve problems, why they complement one another. And to your point, one is not better than the other. But if you've got a bunch of fact finders or follow throughs, watching them go through an experience like that would be very different than watching, say, someone who is naturally inclined to quick start. So let's wrap up on that thought, because if you think about this second part of the book, your favorite part, preparing for exponential growth, what's your recommendation for someone who is watching or listening right now, to where they can begin to do that? They can take action to prepare for exponential growth. And that might sound like a bit of a dilemma. How do you take action preparing? You got to take action even in preparation.
I would say go read is it chapter 6, Become a Digital
Stoic,
Growth Stoic? Go read chapter 6, because this is one of the reasons I love this section, but this particular chapter, the emphasis on bringing in that Stoic philosophy, which is really what it comes down to, is what is in your control and what is out of your control. And I think being able to recognize that at a personal, individual level, so that you can then spend or invest your energy, your time, your attention on what's in your control, the choices that you make versus what you can't control. And you have a great illustration or a great image there that distinguishes examples of what's in your control and what's out of your control. And really think about, how much energy are you spending, worrying or thinking about things that you cannot control. And it's hard. It is a daily practice. This is not, and I think you made this point in the book several times. in this section, this is a practice. This is not I've learned this, check it off the list. This is something that it's a continuous habit to revisit and to think about, so that you really can kind of calm that, chaos and the complexity out there at an individual level first, kind of create that peace of mind internally.
Well, that's why I wrote this book, because yes, it is a leader's guide to achieve exponential growth in the age of AI, but more importantly, it is a guide for leaders to first and foremost lead themselves, so that they can then lead their teams through a period of exponential change that can feel confusing, that can feel frustrating, that can feel chaotic. But when you take agency and begin to calm your own mind, the ramifications of that and the potential growth that can come from that, both personally and professionally, really, it is truly exponential. And I am seeing that just with you, Audrey, on your own journey of exponential growth. So thanks for collaborating with me on this journey, for the book, for the podcast. And it's just, you're always reviewing, reflecting, learning, thinking to then do even better. But at the same time, you're transforming your beliefs that ultimately will transform your behaviors going forward into the future.
Thank you.
This has been fun. This has been a great conversation, as always. And until next time, y'all be well. Y'all do good. Y'all be the light. We'll see you soon.